Hello everybody, it's Craig Anthony Ferreira again, and thank you for waiting so patiently for the next chapters of the Submarine. I know that we put out a video a while ago on this giant great white shark, the Submarine, and there's been quite a gap, and it's amazing. The one video, I think we've got close to 150,000 views, so everybody out there that's viewed it, and the tens of thousands of other views on the other videos we've done with Sharks Live, thank you very much. And it's fantastic to see that there's so many sharkaholics out there. Anyway, for those of you that might be coming into this now only, I've been discussing this giant great white shark called the Submarine, which used to maraud the waters of False Bay in the 70s and early 80s. And National Geographic, no, not National Geographic, Discovery Channel, in fact, made this shark is famous and infamous all around the world. And Discovery Channel, I was in Panama at the time. No, I was in the Rio Dulce in Guatemala at the time. And they actually phoned me up and they said, they want to make this 2-hour special documentary on the Submarine. And I spoke to them on the phone very often, and I was one of the advisors, and eventually they made a docudrama, which, to my surprise, I think more than 70% of the viewers believed that it was fact that the submarine was over 30 feet long. But it was a docudrama, so you must understand, it's entertainment. But still, people believed it. But the Submarine, for those of you that might not have seen previous videos, was seen by me personally on 3 occasions. And the Submarine was about 7 meters long, or let's say 23 feet long. But by far, the biggest great white shark that I've ever seen in my life. And I've worked with several thousand individual great white sharks. And my teams and the people I work with, my colleagues, like Ryan Johnson, etc., we've all worked with thousands of individual great white sharks. And you don't see, you almost never see great white sharks over 17, 18 feet long, like 5 meters, 5.5 meters long. They're very rare, these big 6 meter, 5.5 meter, 6.5 meter great white sharks. So I was extremely fortunate as a young boy, 12, 13 years old, to see the Submarine, by far the biggest great white shark I've ever seen. We're talking about an animal that is 4,000, 5,000 kilograms, 8,000, 9,000, maybe even 10,000 pounds. And I'm not exaggerating, I know great white sharks. I've seen so many big animals, and there are monsters out there. But perhaps there's a chance that the Submarine is actually the largest great white shark ever sighted in what we can term modern times. From the 70s. Don't want to disregard anybody born before the 70s, because I was born in 68. But in modern times. So that is where we arrived at. So I was telling you in the last videos about the Submarine. So the first time I saw it was, we tried to hook it, and it was not possible to hook it. My father and his friends saw it the first time around. I'd heard about it. It was folklore, it was legend in the Strand, Gordons Bay, South Africa, an area. It's legendary around the world now. And then I saw it when we went out one day, the first time trying to actually hunt the Submarine, and we hooked it, and it just simply, we had a marlin hook, a big marlin hook, fishing hook, and the Submarine just straightened the hook out as straight as a, a arrow. Sorry, I saw the Submarine on 2 occasions, not 3 occasions. My father saw it on 4 occasions. So it just straightened the hook out. Boom. So anyway, we went back to the drawing board. I was 12 or 13 years old, or yeah, it was the summer of 81, so I must have been close to 13 or just turned 13. Can't give you exact dates, but that's not important. So my father then went around Cape Town to all the fishing shops, the fish tackle shops, and he wanted to find the biggest hook he could to go out again and catch this submarine. And he came back home. He found this store that had these two hooks. I shit you not. I mean, hooks like this, as thick as my thumb. Maybe not quite as thick as my thumb, but as thick as that finger. Monster shark hooks. And the guy just had two of these hooks lying in his store, and he said they came in with some consignment, and he never knew if they were actually meant to catch sharks because he didn't know that hooks that large were even produced. So he figured that they were just used to hang up as sort of ornaments. So my father said, no, I want those two hooks, and he bought the two hooks from the guy. And by that time, I think my father was sponsored by Pen Reels and Purglass or Fenwick fishing rods. And he came home, and before he came home, he went to the boat shop, and he didn't buy fishing wire. He went to a boat shop and he bought winch cable. You know, the cable that you get on the trailer of a small fishing boat, and you actually winch the boat up onto the trailer. So he went and bought winch cable. I mean, we weren't joking around. And he bought copper pipe, and him and I went into the garage, and I was very excited because I loved great white sharks. I loved any sharks. And my father took 8 meters of this cable, and he put the hook on the one end, and he put the cable through the hook and to the eye of the hook, and he put a pipe onto it, a couple of copper pipes, and he banged it and hammered it and turned it into crimps. And then on the other end of the cable, he made a loop which was going to get attached to a 20-liter plastic drum. And he made a loop and crimped that as well, and he had a big swivel on it, like a big game fishing swivel, and the line would go through the swivel. So you'd have the hook, 8 meters of cable, the drum, and then the fishing line to the rod, or the dacron, to the big game fishing rod through the eye. And anyway, so he got this all rigged up. We rigged it up, and this was maybe 10 days later or a week later, after the first time we hooked the submarine, where she, and if you go back into our videos on Sharks Live, you'll hear that story, where she actually straightened the hook out. And on that particular day, I think it was a Saturday or Sunday, it was myself on the boat, it was my best friend Devon, it was my father, and a guy that worked for him called Trevor Grant. And we headed out to sea, and we left Gordon's Bay, and the wind was howling through Gordon's Bay, and the sea was quite rough. And Katana, the boat, our 20-foot boat, it would go up a wave and then shoulder itself through and dip down into the next trough, and water would be spraying everywhere. And I took stock behind my dad. My dad was this big guy, because he kind of interrupted the wind for me and the cabin as well. It was early in the morning. I mean, the sun was just coming over the horizon. We were heading out. But as we went past the Strand, because we were running about 9 miles down the coast to the water tower, which is where my father had first seen the submarine the first time, where we had, where we had actually hooked the submarine when I went out on the second trip, and we were headed for the water tower. And as we got further and further away from Gordon's Bay, the wind subsided, and eventually we were running on a beautiful, flat, glassy ocean. And eventually we came to the water tower. The water tower used to stand on the beach, and we were about 2 kilometers offshore. My father switched on the echo sounder, found the bottom, and we looked for a reef. And I would say we were about 2 kilometers out to sea from the beach, in 22 meters of water, because it's kind of a gradual, shallow bay, false bay, near Cape Town. And so we anchored the boat. And have I actually got to this part of the story? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so we anchored the boat, and my father pulled out his fishing rod, and he put bait on, and he put it down, and within a couple of minutes, I mean, those days, the reefs of False Bay were very alive with fish. Today, unfortunately, it's all dead, but put his hooks down, and in a couple of minutes we had two big red stump nose like this. I mean, it's quite a big round striped silver and red fish. We call them St. Lucy's or red stump nose, and got a very particular smell. And it's one of the great white shark's favorite fish to eat. And so my dad got these two fish up. They were still alive, and I know it sounds very cruel, but he threaded the first one onto the hook, and he threaded the second one onto the hook. So he had these two big red stump nose on the hook now, and he put the hook into the water, and he guided the fish, and the hook went down 8 meters down, and he guided the cable out, the fishing cable, and eventually it was the drum. So now the fish were 8 meters below the surface, put the drum into the water, and he slowly let the drum drift off the back of the boat, off the stern of the boat, maybe 12, 15 meters out. And then he set the rod up, and he set the ratchet, this big Pen 14-0 reel that looked like a boat winch, not a fishing reel, and this rod, and he put it into the gimbet, and it just stood there. Now it was still early in the morning, it was maybe 8 o'clock in the morning by that time, or 7:30, I can't remember. And now we waited for the submarine to appear. And in those days we didn't chum. Nowadays when we go out looking for great white sharks, not to fish them, to do research on them, or to dive with them, or to film them, as our company does, we chum the waters. And in those days, if we knew about chumming, because this was still new to us. My father had caught many other species of shark. He had caught marlin and sailfish and tuna, but hunting great white sharks, and especially something the size of the submarine, which was just beyond comprehension, was a whole different ball game. So we were learning as we went along. My dad was learning as he went along, and we knew what we knew today, or what we knew 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. We would have chummed the waters, and we probably had 4 or 5 great white sharks around the boat. But for some reason, we just waited, and the hours ticked by. 15 minutes went by, half an hour went by, an hour went by, 2 hours went by, 3 hours went by. Eventually it crept into the afternoon, the early afternoon. But then something happened. And I'm going to stop the video now because we're at 12, almost 13 minutes. I'm trying to keep these videos under 15 minutes long. But the submarine, around about 1 o'clock that afternoon on that day, the submarine appeared at the boat. We were sitting there, and I remember something catching the corner of my eye, and I looked up, and I looked at the drum, and there was a massive dark shadow under the water just below the surface. And this animal, this giant great white shark, just interrupted and disrupted and moved the ocean. It turned, it must have come from deep or from where we couldn't see, and it circled the back of the drum. It came up to the drum to inspect the drum, and it just disturbed the ocean. The ocean went into a whirlpool, and the shark came cruising up towards us from the drum, and it came up towards the boat. And as it came up, it surfaced, and its dorsal fin cut a hole into the sky, basically. This towering, massive dorsal fin. And the water, I remember clearly how the water ran off the back of the submarine. And her tail, several meters behind the dorsal fin, her tail was out the water, and the tail just moved slowly like this. And each time it moved, it caused these little whirlpools in the ocean. And she came up to the boat, to the side of the boat. But I'll continue the story now. It's 14 and a half minutes now. So this is part 1 of the first time, the second time I saw the submarine. And on this occasion, we almost lost our lives, but I'll tell you the rest of the story now.